Ask you to gather into a spirit of worship. Come, let us enter this space of hope and community. Let us enter with our sorrows, our joys, our passion and compassion. Come, let us enter with the stories of our ancestors, for their strength and wisdom beats in our hearts. Come into this space present to the beloved companions who move beside us, and mindful that together we are building a future for other generations. Come into this space and let us worship. The words of Katie Romano Griffin. I invite you to rise in body and spirit to join in singing number 347, Gather the Spirit, and remain standing for the chalice lighting and the doxology. come forward, please.
Let this flame be to us a symbol of the wholeness we seek.
Its brightness dispelling gloom, lighting a path to faith and hope.
Its glow reminding us of the sacred bonds that link us to all living things.
Its radiance calling up to cast the light of freedom, justice, and peace upon the world. Please be seated. Good morning and welcome on this absolutely glorious New England autumn day. I am the Reverend Susan Milner. My pronouns are she, her, and hers, and it is my honor and my pleasure to serve this historic congregation as interim minister. As a congregation, we gratefully acknowledge the Patuxet Wampanoag people on whose ancestral lands we gather today. We commit to support and honor their history and culture. We welcome all of you very warmly this morning, members, friends, and also those who are visiting. Whoever you are, wherever you are on your spiritual journey, for this 1 hour, we want you to be part of this congregation. You are most welcome here. Everyone is warmly invited to attend coffee hour following the service in the assembly hall, through that door all the way down that hall. And if you are visiting this morning, if you would take a red mug for your coffee or tea, that would allow our members and friends to give you a particularly warm First Parish welcome. I want to lift up just a couple of very brief announcements. One is to remind you of the art workshop this afternoon, the fun cartoon workshop at 3 p.m. led by Jim Hamilton. It's open to everyone age 10 and up. And then also, to draw your attention to the fact that in this week, when we will have this month of a theme of heritage, when we will have dealt with many heavy and sober topics, next Sunday we'll be reflecting seriously on Samhain, but also celebrating Halloween with a big pumpkin party after the service with all kinds of fun. And we are encouraging everybody to come, bring friends, and people of all ages we encourage to wear costumes. So it'll be fun. It'll be good to have a morning of fun. At this point, we are going to sing our children out so that they can go downstairs for all the things that they're working on down there. So I invite you to join in singing Go Now in Peace. Go now in peace. Go now in peace. As part of weaving the fabric of community that we create and recreate here every time we gather, this congregation once a month sets aside time for joys and sorrows, spoken joys and sorrows, once a month, silent ones. So I invite anyone who has a joy or concern that you wish to share this morning to come forward and light a candle. You are certainly welcome to light it in silence. If you have something you want to speak, speak directly into the microphone, and please be brief.
My name is Jean Penven. My candle of joy is for my little sister, who will for the first time in her life have her own home. It was bequeathed to her by my cousin Jennifer, and she'll move in this month. And my second candle is one of concern. We obviously are living in a world with a lot to be concerned about, and my prayer goes out.
Hi, we're lighting a candle of joy because we have a brand new grandbaby, grandgirl. Her name is Aviva, and we're very excited about it, so thank you.
I lit 2 candles, one of concern for the people in Gaza, Israel, and Palestine, as well as the Americans who are trapped there. And I lit a candle of joy for my dad, who just turned 89, and he's still buying green bananas.
So my sister and I are lighting 3 candles today. We have great joy in our family, which came off of great sorrow. And so the first candle is for our great niece Lainey, who died last December. The next 2 candles are for these identical twin boys born to the same family. They're a month old today, I think. They're Cal and J.R. And so there's a blessing and joy along with the sorrow.
I had so much trouble, I only lit 1, but I have 2 joys to celebrate. 5 of my closest high school friends and I were all born in about a 6-week cluster in 1946, so we're all celebrating our 77th birthdays last month and this, and it's just, it seems a little unusual to me, but very nice to still have all these friends scattered around the country, but we stay in touch with each other. That kind of friendship really helps enrich lives. And then our granddaughter Molly, who grew up in this church and was in many of the school plays and functions, turned 21 on Thursday, and she's just really a remarkable, put-together person, and it's a joy to see her. Thank you.
I have a joy. It's a grandson, and I have a concern, and it's about the same grandson. He graduated from college in the spring, but doesn't have a job. Seems a little clueless. It's a concern of mine.
And one candle for all the joys and sorrows that go unspoken but remain in our hearts today. I invite you to join in a spirit of prayer, meditation, attention, intention, and then a few moments of silence. Spirit of life and love, in a world that is hurting badly, in days that are marked by turmoil, may we find within ourselves that still center, that inexplicable core of life that shapes freedom into meaning. May it grant us peace so that wounds may heal, compassion that we might extend our care, courage that we can insist on justice, and understanding that we might meet each other in love. With gratitude for this day and hope for the days to come, let us enter into the silence. May our hopes and dreams take flight on the wings of love. And now I'm going to invite you to read responsively with me number 591 in the back of the hymnal, the gray hymnal. This reading is from James Luther Adams, who figures prominently in today's sermon, and so it seemed appropriate to me that we speak his words aloud. I will speak and then please respond. I call that church free which enters into covenant with the ultimate source of existence. It binds together families and generations, protecting against the idolatry of any human claim to absolute truth or authority. I call that church free which brings individuals into a caring, trusting fellowship. It is open to insight and conscience from every source. It bursts through rigid tradition, giving rise to new and living language, to new and broader fellowship. The goal is the prophethood and priesthood of all believers, the one for the liberty of prophesying, the other for the ministry of healing. On a day that is being so generous with us, with sun and crystal clarity, may we in turn be generous in supporting the ministries of this congregation, the work of the congregation, the service of the congregation. The morning offering will now be given and gratefully received. When I was in divinity school studying for the ministry, the great Unitarian Universalist theologian and activist James Luther Adam lived down the street from the campus. Adams had retired from teaching by then, but he frequently invited the Unitarian Universalist ministerial students to his house for tea. It turned out that JLA, as he was often called, lived not in one of the graceful, old, historical, storied houses of Cambridge, but in a rather squat little modern home squeezed between two of its more traditional neighbors. On those late Friday afternoons in that little home, we would literally sit on the floor around the coffee table listening to stories of his experience in Germany during the rise of Nazism and his own conversion to social activism. He spoke also of his deep belief in the importance to democracy, about which he was passionate, the importance to it of voluntary associations, including the church. It was in voluntary associations that he believed people found their voice, found their questioning, exercised their reason, and found their will to act. At those teas, we answered his questions, or tried to. We debated, and it was exciting. But now I know that it was much more, for Adams was teaching us, however gently, that we would inherit responsibility for the deepest values of our tradition, and in turn need to answer the call to uphold them, however that call came. So often in the past few years, when violent, oppressive, or anti-democratic acts have been committed or words spoken, some very good person will say, usually before a camera, "This is not who we are. This is not who America is." In the face of a coup at the Capitol, a hateful rally with torches, the banning of books, the denial of a valid election, the taking away of reproductive rights, people feel the need to say it. This is not who we are. And they mean, of course, that these acts do not reflect the ideals and values of the America that they cherish, that we cherish. Not what the builders in their better moments and the renovators of this republic, renovators like Abraham Lincoln or Frederick Douglass, called for. But here's the problem. It is, in part, who we are. And that's part of the call to uphold our values. In Healing the Heart of Democracy, Parker Palmer, who created the Center for Courage and Renewal, writes that America's founding gave us an informing myth about ourselves as a people, not myth as a lie, but myth as a story that explains and inspires. It's a story really about what America could become. It has been remarkably insistent and inspiring. I can testify to that. Growing up as a poor but white child in the South, seeing discrimination, racism, segregation, I nevertheless believed, whether naively or hopefully, in that story of America as a sanctuary for freedom and equality. In my 9th grade civics class, Mr. Worth, what a name, a previous military man, taught us to learn by heart and to respect the 3 separate branches of government as checks and balances on each other. I volunteered in a senatorial campaign when I was in high school and then in college joined civil rights protests, which over the years led to efforts in AIDS awareness, marriage equality, new waves of racial justice. And I know that I am not unique in this room. Many of you, if not most of you, have also worked to realize the ideals that are important to you. And we have done it because we believe what James Luther Adams advocated passionately, that this old house, despite all its faults, holds the promise of justice and inclusion. In Palmer's words, our desire to be a nation that honors human equality has proved so powerful that we have been compelled to pursue it for nearly 2.5 centuries, a task that will continue to occupy us as long as this nation exists. From the beginning, though, there has been another storyline in the country, one in which it is vulnerable to its fault lines of prejudice and authoritarian impulses. I began school in Tennessee just a few years after Brown v. Education with the first and only black student in my school sitting in the front row of my class every day, the front row of my class. It never occurred to me until many years later to wonder whether the teacher put Larissa there to protect her or to keep her under control. And all the scenes of law enforcement setting dogs on protesters, citizens turned away from polling sites, the murder of the Kennedys. Dreams were not supposed to end that way in America. But those faults, those impulses are part of our heritage too. And in recent years, the embrace of authoritarianism has begun to feel like the fault that could bring the house down. When you grow up in a part of the country that takes pride in having severed itself from the Union and rejected the Union and the Constitution, it's hard not to notice. But later attempts to unseat the government of this country have received new attention from the scholarship of Rachel Maddow and her podcast Ultra and her new book Prequel. Forgotten for years by the larger culture was the conspiracy of several United States senators who were paid by the Nazi government to stage a coup against Roosevelt, against the government in the 1940s. Senator Gerald Nye, who helped found the infamous but powerful America First Committee, got onto the floor of the Congress and promoted the idea that America was being pulled into the Second World War by Jewish conspirators. Nye and a few others gave speeches written by Nazi agent George Viereck on the floor of Congress, and then using the congressional privilege of, what's it called? I forget the term, but sent them out to constituents. Imagine getting those speeches from your senators. The same men spoke at rallies where the meeting halls were adorned with swastikas. If you have never seen it, watch the 2017 documentary, A Night at the Garden. You can find it online, featuring grainy black and white film of a 1939 rally that filled Madison Square Garden. Behind the speaker is a huge rendering of George Washington between two Nazi flags. As the FBI mounted evidence against the senators, they were indicted for sedition and brought to trial but never convicted because, as Maddow says, the trial turned into utter bedlam. This is a real part of American history, a part of our heritage we must reckon with if we are going to stabilize our house And the hope lies in everyday people who are willing to carry those values, to respect them, to exercise the basic rights, who want to protect and will protect above all the fundamental right of voting. You know, although the criminal justice system failed to convict and imprison those traitorous senators, Americans, given the chance, voted every single one of them out of office. There's a spark of humanity, something spiritually strong that, given agency and the chance to embrace a freer, a better way, rises above fear and threats and hatred and prejudice. Just this week, even as our own American House of Representatives foundered, the people of Poland turned out to vote in unprecedented numbers and ousted an increasingly authoritarian leader from office who was dismantling rights and freedoms over a period of years. Now the Polish government prepares to do the long, hard work of rebuilding a democratic government from which the support beams have been removed. As a faith, our Unitarian Universalism has been closely entwined with the democratic values of this country. They're in our principles, our governance, our hearts, our advocacy, whether it was in our forebears trying to abolish slavery or advance civil rights or advocate for marriage equality. At our best, we do our part, and our efforts have not been without deep fault, some of which we've looked at this month, but all those years ago, James Luther Adams told some fledgling ministers that faith is confidence. It's confidence. And confidence is found in realizing that we cannot inherit the freedoms of this religious tradition or this country, the freedoms fought for by our spiritual ancestors, without being willing in our time to fight for them as well. James Luther Adams himself answered the call because of what had happened to him in Germany. On his first trip in 1927, he stood on a street in Berlin watching one of the Nazis' early rallies. When he asked someone in the crowd what was the meaning of the swastika, and the person responded, his own temper rose and he fell into a fierce argument. Before he knew what happened, a stranger pulled him out of the group and pushed him down a side street to a dead-end alley. There the man yelled at him, "You fool! Don't you know? In Germany today, when you are watching a parade, you either keep your mouth shut or you get your head busted in." Adams asked the man, "Why did you help me?" And the latter replied that he also opposed fascism. And then he invited the American home to Sunday dinner. That afternoon, Adams learned much about what threatens freedom and much about what gives people hope and persistence. And most importantly, by the end of the day, he had turned the questioning back on himself. As he put it years later, he had asked, "What is it in my preaching and my action that would stop this?" Adams returned to Germany several times, and eventually he was questioned by the Gestapo. He made it out of Germany safely, but he never, ever stopped answering that question here in the midst of our faults and our impulses. He spent the rest of his life resisting, educating, gathering people in voluntary association to reflect and act on their values. Over decades, he fought anti-Semitism, the violation of civil liberties and rights, leading an all-night vigil in a new federal housing project in Chicago from which whites were excluding blacks, and demanding that the Red Cross end racial segregation in providing blood to soldiers in World War II. One of his most moving stories was of practicing what he called aggressive love to bring blacks into the First Unitarian Church of Chicago and insist that they participate in governing the congregation and not only being given jobs ushering. He never stopped working to identify the flaws in our own creaking house and the larger house of our country, and to imagine what they could be instead. Everything he did was centered in his Unitarian Universalist faith, his belief that any kingdom of God would happen here on earth and that it would be we who bring it about. In his own words, the faith of a church or a nation is an adequate faith only when it inspires and enables people to give of their time and energy to shape the various institutions, social, economic, and political, of the common life. As a congregant, a minister, and a person of deep commitment, he taught his students, in his own words, "We are not a religious tradition with a creed, but a religious movement that has always wedded social justice work to theology." So we lift up his question for reflection. What in our lives, in our actions, in our decisions, can stop the rise of authoritarianism in our own time? And keep your eyes on the distro, because I'm going to be inviting any who want to join me in a read of a book on resisting tyranny and a discussion of it. It'll be one session, and it'll be, I think, in this week's distro. You know, looking back, perhaps it made sense that James Luther Adams lived in a little modern house in the middle of a traditional neighborhood. Maybe it was absolutely appropriate. He was a teacher and a prophet with deep feeling for the foundation, and also a tireless willingness to do the work of restoration. May his teachings, his memory, and his spirit ever inspire us to answer the call of conscience. I'm going to invite you to rise in body or spirit and join in singing hymn number 155, Circle Round for Freedom. Let's sing it through 3 times. benedictions are the words of Maya Angelou. History, despite its wrenching pain, cannot be unlived, but if faced with courage, need not be lived again. Lift up your eyes on the day breaking before you. Give birth again to the dream. Amen.